15 weeks ago, what did you most wonder? What did they all want? What did we all seek? To matter today. To be the answer to the question, the proof to the doubt, the fact to the theory. To be named, elected, chosen. After the upsets and comebacks, the last-minute wins and the late-season losses, through the challenges and tests, among the successes and surprises, the last bracket, and the first four.
Absolute dominant performance.
Time to wonder is over. Time to win is now.
Welcome to Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. We are live on the couch as we have been for the last 3 years, and it's getting weird. I mean, there are so many big boys. Like, I'm already little. I know I'm little. I wore my Christmas onesie. I felt good about it. Not everybody got the memo. My big Emmanuel Acho looking great as always. Trevor Scales came in. Like, Trevor,
decent.
He knew.
I know my lane, baby.
He knew the deal. We even expand today. We go to the kitchen, and like as we get to the kitchen, it gets again properly dressed this time. So Christine's over there. Christine got the memo. She's with us every single week. But on top of that, Eric McLean and EJ Manuel join us. They're all professional. Like, Christine, should we show everybody what the sweaters are capable of?
Okay, yeah, so mine lights up. It's a motion light. I didn't even realize this when I bought it, but Santa's actually flossing.
Oh, yeah.
And it says,
I like that.
you feel me?
I like that.
It's kind of lame, but it's like kind of cool at the same time. You feel me?
No big deal, but kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
Well, we'll add to that because Junior and I, we were waiting. We were being controlled. We were being professional, but we also light up. So I'm just saying, there's a lot of light up Christmas.
No shade.
Next year
we come prepared though. We got it.
Now that you've seen what the standard is,
don't worry.
It's not just the top. Everyone can do the top 4 teams for you. Very few can do it in this manner with this many Cheez-Its on the damn couch.
Let's also acknowledge that this was the professional thing I brought today. Far more professional than the other. We're presented by Cheez-Its. We got a bowl of Cheez-Its behind us. We got a trophy that grows every week. So like it started, for y'all that are new, it started as a tiny Cheez-It trophy. Now there's actually like a massive Cheez-It at the top of the Cheez-It trophy. And now there's going to be like a mud wrestling battle outside to figure out who keeps the trophy at the end, because there's only one trophy, and there's a few of us that have been on the show every single week.
There's a real awkward tension in the air right now for who is fighting to steal all the stuff that ESPN and Cheez-Its paid for to bring into this house. So we're going to figure that out one way or another over the course of the day.
It's gonna get dirty. We got a 4 to get to, but speaking of Cheez-It, we were having a great Cheez-It debate. I want to get quickly everybody's thoughts on this, okay? When you eat a Cheez-It, we'll start with you, all right? Yeah. When you eat a Cheez-It, is it one per Cheez-It, or is it one per serving, or do you grab a couple?
I'll probably grab a handful, and I got big hands, so I'm more of a handful.
Oh, yeah. All I need is like 3 handfuls.
Let's see.
No.
I just had lunch.
And is it one flavor or multiple flavors in there? Okay, one flavor handful.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going 2 at a time, and I got to mix up the flavors. As you see here, I've got my ranch and my buffalo.
Okay.
Oh, that's smart.
I got to combine.
It's like putting ranch on the buffalo.
Yeah, right.
Spoken like a true lineman.
No, but see, like he's doing it right, by the way.
Good combos.
The Zesty Ranch, new to the show this week, didn't make it over to the couch for some reason. I'm just saying, Christine, you've been on it.
We want to hold it down over here. I'm a one Cheez-It person because I like to savor the flavor.
I get that.
I see you.
I get that.
But what flavor?
I see you.
What flavor?
Okay,
Loyalty.
the best one is toasted.
Toasted?
Toasted. I like them when they're a little crispy, a little burnt.
Okay.
You feel me?
I feel that.
Everyone wants it. Yes.
The burnt ones are the best.
I mean, the grooves for me, by the way. The grooves are spectacular.
It's another
And every week, I'm like, whatever the new flavor is my favorite flavor of all time. So now I'm all in on Zesty Ranch. Emmanuel Acho, you've come so, like, do you have to worry when you are wearing something that's, I don't know, like proper and light colored? Do you have to worry about,
You got to be cognizant. You can't go with the handful like EJ. You got to take one because it leaves the least residue. The least Cheez-It residue.
Residue.
Cheez-It residue.
Wash your hands out there.
Just one at a time. Okay.
I like this.
That's a TV approach right there.
Right.
We got some people out in the
Delicate.
studio.
He did play linebacker, but he's secretly a pretty boy too, though. I see this guy every weekend. Pretty boy. I ain't mad at you, though.
Understand that line doesn't say that pristine if he doesn't. It's not that pristine if he doesn't take those measures. I understand it.
I mean, Trevor Scales, you're the Harvard boy of the group. Like, come on, now do you
I'm a one-season cap myself. Like, I don't need the overload on flavor. I like to appreciate each and every single bite that I'm taking. Straight up and down.
I respect it.
Straight up and down.
Anybody that watches Junior and I all knows that we're just savages for all the Cheez-Its we can possibly get. So, again, rankings reaction, we should actually, react to some rankings. So let's give you what the committee has already told us. And what we know right now are the top 4 teams in all the land. At number 4, and this was going to be part of the conversation we were all eager to look at, Oklahoma comes in at number 4. Utah made that a little easier for them, obviously, with their Pac-12 loss. Clemson in at number 3, and this is where everybody was looking to see what the committee thought after the SEC championship game. Well, Ohio State goes to 2. And LSU, that means, comes in after thumping Georgia in what I think is the least surprising result of the weekend. Sorry, Trevor. They thump Georgia. LSU goes to number 1. So let me start with a very obvious question here. Emmanuel, we'll throw to you first. Clemson's at number 3.
Yep.
And all I keep hearing about is that the number 1 team wanted to be number 1 so they could avoid Clemson. If we're all so worried about avoiding Clemson, shouldn't they be the number 1 team in the country?
Technically, you could make the argument that like Clemson should be because of how good they've played. Here's the catch. They ain't played nobody. No disrespect to Clemson at all whatsoever. No disrespect to them, but they can't dictate who's on their schedule. They haven't played anybody. Everybody they've played, they've crushed. Again, they don't make the schedule. They just play the games. Ohio State, LSU, not only have they dominated, they've dominated ranked opponents.
And I think it's a matter of progression, too. Like, Clemson got better throughout the year, right? We saw early on a couple stumbles against UNC, against Louisville, even in the first half. We were a little bit more concerned about the Clemson Tiger program than we had been in seasons past. So seeing that progression, understanding that there was a ceiling to their growth over the course of the season, courtesy of the way that Ohio State and LSU played throughout the entire season, that's kind of where they end up.
Yeah, all of these things can be true at once. Like, we can all think, man, Clemson might be the best team in college football right now, but we know the way the game goes with this committee ranking, which is what you put on your resume has to matter at some point, or else you introduce full-on anarchy into that room. And so they're ranked exactly where they should be, but everyone kind of knows the truth. When we look at the AP ranked wins for LSU and for Ohio State, their positioning makes sense. I'd ask EJ and Eric, like, you guys work with the ACC network. Eric, obviously you are a Clemson alum, so you know this as well as anybody, but seeing this team even go through what's been a down year in that conference, they've started to play their best football as of late, like last year.
Right, and that's just what they do. They're better as the season goes on. When it comes November, that championship phase, they're at another level. And I think what's interesting about them falling, they were 5 at one point. I mean, how comical is that they were at number 5? When you look at just history and we see the AP rankings, a preseason number 1 team who has not lost has not fallen since the 60s. So this is something that was almost a new precedent in this modern day of football. So it kind of makes you scratch your head and you say, well, why are they falling down? I get they haven't played anybody. They have 2 SEC caliber opponents. One was number 12 when they played them. Afterwards, you see what happens. They get banged up. They're injured. It takes care of itself. But, I think, like everybody's saying, nobody wants to play the Tigers for a reason. And if they're number 3, they're number 3.
Yeah, I would agree. I think at the end of the day, Clemson doesn't care whether they're 1, 2, 3, or 4. They just wanted to get in the dance. And we all know this. Once you get in the playoff, it's an entirely new season. So I guarantee it's going to be who they play now. It's going to be Ohio State. Okay, so they're looking at it. They're licking their chops. And we all saw it. We talked about it before the show. It didn't really seem like Ohio State was too excited to run the Tigers anyway. So at the end of the day, whoever's going to be number 1 is going to be settled. And I think Clemson's going to handle it.
What's funny to me, though, is that, like, EJ hit the nail on the head. Clemson, I feel like, has to be the first 3 seed that people are intimidated by.
Right.
Like, ain't nobody trying to see Clemson right now, and that speaks volumes to Clemson.
There's a little bit, though, I keep using this analogy. If you're watching Mike Tyson in his prime, and one day he beats the snot out of me, and then the next day he beats the snot out of Mike, you can look at it and say, maybe, no offense, I know you'd be a great boxer, but you look at it
I know what you mean.
I don't want any perks on Tyson. I want that out there in the universe. If Mike Tyson is watching this, we're good. We don't have any reason to go down this road. Continue.
I mean, but the point being, if you're watching Tyson in his prime, okay, he's beating up on terrible opponents, but he's still Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
All right, Clemson's still Mike Tyson. But there is a challenge here for the committee, and I think that's why everybody sits there and says, hey, why are they doing what they're doing with the rankings? I mean, where is the line between best and most deserving? Because That's what we're seeing right now. They might be the best team in college football, but they're not deserving today of the number 1 ranking.
That's exactly what it is, right? It's that Venn diagram, right? Where you have 2 circles, best versus most deserving. You're trying to find that mesh point in between the two. Whereas you can rank each and every one of these top 4 teams that we have at this point, in that LSU and Ohio State are easily the 2 best teams, it feels like. Clemson is another one of those best that slides more to that side of the scale. And when you slide in Oklahoma, that's when you're getting more into the most deserving argument, because there are certainly faults in what they do, but they are certainly more than worthy of kind of being in this conversation given the resume that they've built over the course of the season.
That's the unfortunate part about it. We went through, championship weekend, and we had all the conference championship games being played. And we all kind of expected this. For as much as we sit around in the college football playoff talk and invent all these weird scenarios, we expected chalk to hold. And then Wisconsin was up 21-7 in the first half of the Big Ten. And we're all like, it's going to happen. Can we get Wisconsin into this thing? Is Oregon all of a sudden back eligible? Because what combined with Oklahoma, and this is the other strange part of this now, is we have this talk about 1 through 3 that really seems set apart. And then Oklahoma's sitting there just like, all right, like they're kind of getting what Notre Dame was getting last year, which is you got a bit of a first round buy-in. Oklahoma has, through the benefit, through their college football playoff performances in the past, I think earned the benefit of the doubt. But especially after going against a Baylor team that wound up on its 3rd string quarterback in the Big 12 title and taking that game to overtime, I don't think people were coming into this, and that's why so much discussion was almost invited in around that 4 spot should Wisconsin have held on and made things weird.
Had Wisconsin have held on and beat Ohio State by 2 or 3 touchdowns, it would have got real interesting, because now you look at the picture and Wisconsin smashed Michigan. Wisconsin beat Iowa. Wisconsin would have beat Ohio State. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking at the resume, and I know I'm missing one more. It slipped my head. But now you're looking at the Wisconsin resume, and you couldn't have unequivocally said, Oklahoma is better than Wisconsin. Now, you can clearly say Oklahoma's more deserving. They have 1 loss. But there's no way, if you look at ball, you can unequivocally say, Oklahoma and Wisconsin, Oklahoma's far and away the better team. That was a dilemma we were about to be put in.
EJ, you look like you've got it coming. What's on your mind?
I mean, I just think it's funny that Clemson gets penalized for winning all their games. And I understand the ACC at the end of the day, it's a bunch of, we call it coastal chaos on that side of the division. And, it's not pretty. You don't have like sexy wins in the ACC like you do in the SEC or the Big Ten. But at the end of the day, like Emac said, you have to get rewarded when you don't lose a football game, whether you win by 1 point, whether you win by 45 points, which is their average the past couple weeks. So, I don't think it's even worth them worrying about. Now they're in the playoff, and it's a whole new season.
Well, and that's the thing is, I don't think they were penalized. I just think LSU.
But to be 5, when it first came out,
listen.
5.
Listen. There was definitely.
That was like a slap in the face.
It's funny because I've even caught myself when we talk about the North Carolina game saying when Clemson lost, because that's what it felt like.
Exactly.
It felt like a loss.
Yeah.
And you know what? It took a while, but I think the market did correct it. It was about when College Game Day went to South Dakota State. Yeah. I remember that was when people started to look up and say, oh, by the way, like Clemson's defense is like one of the top 3 in the country again, and Brent Venables has made magic again, and so it kind of corrected itself, because now I look at this and I say we rewarded Ohio State and LSU for having a schedule. Again, it wasn't like Clemson tried to schedule cupcakes; it just didn't hit, and that's out of their control.
Speaking of defense, by the way, you're watching College Football Rankings reaction show. Mike Golic Jr., Jason Fitz, Emmanuel Acho. There are so many of us. I'm just glad that I'm even on couch. Trevor Scales. I mean, as we go through this, that's just this side of it, by the way. I thought I was going to have to sit on the floor.
We were having a legit conversation, and Fitz offered. He's like, I guess I'll sit on the floor.
EJ Manuel, Eric McLean, and Christine Williamson all with us as we go through. Yeah, like, by the way, that's the only place I would fit, because there's just a lot of big boys, a lot of mass, a lot of But defense becomes a part of the conversation, because we have been hard, rightfully so, on the LSU defense, not playing up to expectation with the brands that they have on the back of their chest, and as good as those players are. However, that defense showed up big time in the SEC championship game and has played better over the last couple of weeks. So, Eric, when you look at what you saw from the SEC championship game, seeing LSU's defense play well, is that enough to catapult them up to number 1 in your mind?
I think so. I think that was the biggest question mark for me. I see them against Ole Miss and just get blitzed for 450 rushing yards. I'm scratching my head saying, how are these cats going to stop anybody when the playoff comes? Then they really turn it around. Texas A&M hold them to 10. You see what they're able to do to Georgia, or vice versa. They held Georgia to 10, Texas A&M to 7. I really thought they started playing up and playing to their ability. And I think you have to look at it as when you drastically change your offense to this high power, high potent offense, your defense is going to suffer a little bit, and they're going to have to figure out. They're going to have to figure out how to play because the possessions get a lot shorter. Your defense is probably out there a lot more.
E-Mac, I got to talk on that because this is what people don't realize. Offense and defense, although they appear isolated, they're not at all isolated.
Right.
Those are two units that are completely combined in complementary football. LSU, the second they start scoring every third, fourth, and fifth play, now the defense, they're either on the field or they're hearing punt alert real quick. But everything's happening real quick. And I think, to speak on E-Mac's first point, the reason that LSU has to be number one is what the committee told us. The committee gave us a math equation that said LSU is one if their defense is better. LSU said, hey, our defense is now better. So now that their defense is better, the committee had to make them number one because the committee gave us the math equation in the first place. We're just dealing with the math that they gave us.
And it's not. It doesn't hurt that you beat the number 14 perceivably on the final weekend too, right? That also builds the resume again and gets you back into that most deserving
early in the season.
That's fair enough, right? Like, and honestly, and the defensive performance against an offense that is defunct at best at times when we look at that. When we look at it play.
Speaking of defunct offense, it's worth noting that and LSU's defense deserves credit for stepping up in the last couple weeks. No Lawrence Cager in that game, out with injury for Georgia. George Pickens was out the first half because of that fight from the game before.
So gets hurt halfway through.
I would say DeAndre Swift came in banged up and looked like it for a large portion of that game. So they did not get even the full complement of what was a not great Georgia offense.
And let's also be, I was at that game last night. One of the things that was staggering early on is that Georgia had open opportunities down the field deep, and you're looking at it and saying, man, there are no wide receivers.
And they were taking shots. That was the most surprising. I didn't expect them to even take the shot.
But I think that brings back the point we've all discussed is that's why, to me, LSU can breathe a sigh of relief by avoiding Clemson. They can breathe because where Clemson is strongest right now, at the receivers, with Ross, with Higgins, with Lawrence, who I think has thrown 22 touchdowns and no interceptions in the last 8 or so weeks. That's where LSU is susceptible at times. Stingley balled out. We all saw that true freshman ball out. Grant Delpit is getting healthier. But my fear is at the end of the day, Ross, Higgins, and Lawrence are all savages.
I would agree, and I would say both teams do have a deficiency at DB, and they have good DBs, but you saw Bryce Perkins last night get off as well with his arm. So it's not like, Ohio State. I think Justin Fields is one of the better quarterbacks in the country. They always have great receivers. So I think that might be something for Clemson to look into because they don't want to be susceptible to getting beat.
It's going to be very interesting to see how much that MCL heals up for Ohio State's quarterback, Justin Fields. I think if he's mobile, he's again, you got to pay attention to him as well as cover guys because when stuff breaks down, that's when he's an artist. He's out there painting, keeping his eyes downfield, throwing that deep ball. If he becomes immobile and is just sitting back there like he was against Wisconsin, those boys are going to be coming from the Clemson Tigers.
We obviously can't do a show on social media without figuring out what social media is saying. Christine, are they happy? Are they mad? Who does the committee hate?
There's mixed reactions. I did want to ask a question. We were talking about weak defenses, right? Oklahoma, obviously, that's the story of Oklahoma and the Big 12 in general. Russell Miguel on Facebook says it's hard to choose who's number one with the top 3 teams, but LSU basically got a bye with week 1 or with this first matchup going against Oklahoma. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, it's compared to the rest of the group. The difficult part is Oklahoma's also going to be dealing with some injuries coming off that game. We saw Kenneth Murray, their linebacker, Kennedy Brooks, all going down at different points of that game. This is where the gap in between, which is a whole different issue when we talk about college football, the large layoff between conference championship weekend and when we get to games. But they are the weakest defense of the bunch here. And offensively for this team down the stretch, it's been different when you take away, which most teams have said, we're going to take away the big plays, keep that in front of you, and make you work. And it has made the offense largely more one-dimensional, where Jalen Hurts' best ability seems to be as a rusher.
The thing people have to realize, Oklahoma isn't the same firepower offense we were used to seeing. Right now, they have been one-dimensional. Remember, they lost their star-studded tight end, Grant Calcaterra. He's been out the majority of the season with concussions. He officially retired last week. He was an all-Big 12 guy. Kennedy Brooks. Now all of a sudden we're seeing this offense has to go through CeeDee Lamb. I mean, they have to now. That's a hell of a guy to go through because that's a dog. But they have to go through CeeDee Lamb. I do think there's a little bit of a misconception with the Oklahoma defense. I don't think they're as bad as everybody tries to make them out to be. This isn't the Oklahoma defense of the early 2000s or the early 2010s. This defense is a little bit better. But again, when you're talking about going against a firepower offense, Can the defense hold put?
It was a matter of them being able to get after the quarterback yesterday specifically, right? 6 sacks, 7 QB hurries, and that was what eliminated you having to worry about the secondary.
Yep.
But when the ball got out, that's when you saw just poor play, poor angles from safeties, corners losing track of men on deep thirds. Like, it was impossible to sort of conceptualize how they survived to this point, but it really is the pass rush making up for a lot of that.
That's an interesting exercise to kind of look at with all these, because now we're looking at matchups for the top four, and we're kind of trying to figure out what goes on. And Eric, you can speak to this, and EJ is a guy who saw dudes coming at you. Sure. The thing I always look at with a defense is, especially up front, is, all right, who's the one guy that can win on his own that we have to account for? Like, does each team have one of those? Looking at Oklahoma, going into that game, I thought, man, Nicholas Benito, number 35, their linebacker, seems like the dude that's got the juice. Went into that game and showed everyone again that he's got the juice in that one. Look at LSU. That Chason kid is only a sophomore playing outside linebacker for them, and he was giving dudes problems. And a very good Georgia offensive line with Thomas, the tackle. Good dudes on that group up there. You look around and try and do that with everyone now. I'll be interested, because Clemson's defense, I think, has been back end strong for a lot of the years. But would if there's a guy in that group you say is the one-on-one win that their defense can count on, who would it be?
It's Isaiah Simmons. I mean, all day, every day. And the thing that I can't wait to have this discussion for a month about Chase Young, Isaiah Simmons, who's the better defensive player. I think Isaiah is just more of a weapon. There's literally no inch of the football field that he cannot influence or protect or guard. Chase Young, a dominant force that leads Ohio State career in sacks, and it's going to be just two guys that are absolute weapons. I think with Isaiah, they put him in so many different spots. We did a tape yesterday about it. He's lined up at corner. He's at safety, inside, outside linebacker, and then at defensive end when he's even most dangerous. So when he can get those big linemen who aren't used to all that speed and athleticism, he's a freak show and he'll get after them.
All right. So let's take a look then. When you look at these matchups, Vegas has told us it's about the 10-point spread between LSU and Oklahoma. Anybody think that's wrong?
I don't think so. I think you got a quarterback in Jalen Hurts. He's been here before. You know what I mean? This guy played in SEC. He's one of the SEC. He's won national championships before. Won SEC championships. So at the end of the day, he's not going to go into this game and say, hey, we're playing against LSU, the number one team in the country. Right. Let's go. And I mean, I think his teammates are going to see that type of excitement, that type of confidence, and they're going to feel the same way, and I think they'll feed off of that.
Yeah, there's been a couple of different versions of Jalen Hurts this year when you watch everything back. Like, there's been the version of, I feel like when you watch just the highlight clips, you're looking at it saying, oh my God, yet another quarterback coming out and crushing. When you watch the games back, it's like there are just, and this is something that, you know, he'll presumably it won't hinder him in the playoff, but he's had some moments this season I think are a little bit regrettable. So I look at Joe Burrow versus Jalen Hurts. Joe Burrow's had a definitively better season. And Joe Burrow, by the way, had a coming out party in his athleticism in general.
But as a quarterback, I mean, you're going to have those games. You're going to have those games where the ball slips out your hand. You're going to have the games where things just aren't going your way, but he found a way to win, despite the one loss to Kansas State. So Joe Burrow, obviously, I think will be a top 5 pick in the NFL. He's that refined of a quarterback, but I still think that X factor in Jalen Hurts, being in these types of situations before, always plays into effect.
I think the other X factor everybody has to remember, Lincoln
Yes, sir.
Riley,
Yes, sir.
the head coach for OU. Everybody has to remember. Golic, you hit on it. You got about 3 weeks now till that first game. And they had 3 weeks till December 28th when they kick it off.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley knows his deficiencies.
Yeah.
He knows them better than everybody sitting in this room.
For sure.
So if you don't think he's going to figure out a way to compensate for him, we got something else coming.
How about that for a matchup? Lincoln Riley and Dave Aranda.
Yep.
Yo.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
But that's where coaches make their money, right? Like Mike has said in a moment of honesty and therapy that, you know, maybe it would have looked a little different in the national championship, at least a little bit, if you know, you'd gone right in and played Saban right away. Like, I mean, you give
maybe a little bit. Like, not a ton, but a little bit.
I mean, I'm just saying though that this is where, like, for all the hype that Lincoln Riley gets and for all the hype certain coaches get, there's a reason why. Like, I think that's going to be one of the exciting things for this, is to see when you have this kind of time to get yourself right, what's it look like?
When you go back to that quarterback discussion specifically pertaining to Jalen Hurts, I know we didn't get the rushing game going yesterday personally. His longest rush, I think, was like 8 yards over the entirety of the day. But what they'll be able to do ball control-wise, if they get Kennedy Brooks back and they were able to just kind of hold the ball, play a little keep away, essentially. Like, that's what Georgia attempted to do at times in yesterday's SEC championship. Held LSU, I'd say held as an operative word, but like 17 points at a halfway point for an offense as prolific as that one is a bit of a win, right? Like, they held them to field goals at times where you expected them to go down there and put up 6. But in any case, right, like that's sort of the method that you expect to see, knowing that you have that many weapons in the run game for an Oklahoma offense, and just matter of keeping that clock rolling as much as you can and keeping that offense off of the field.
Here I think is the kicker is, and the stat has slipped my mind, but if I'm not mistaken, Oklahoma's in the bottom half nationally in turnover margin. If they start giving LSU, here's what we know. LSU can get up 21-0 after 4 possessions.
Easily.
I mean, easily. And if they get up 21-0, it's going to be a long, long day. Oklahoma's going to have to find a way to turn over Joe Burrow, something we don't see a lot of. And they're going to have to find a way to try to score on special teams, do some sort of gadget play.
Yeah,
exactly.
just muck it up.
You got to find a way to make LSU's game plan go completely awry.
All right, so it's rankings reaction. We're on Twitter, obviously. A huge group of us. If you haven't seen the rankings yet, they're up on the screen. At 4, Oklahoma. At 3, Clemson. At 2, Ohio State. At number 1, LSU. There is one other team involved in all of this, and let's have a little bit of it. I'm going to stir the pot a little bit, okay? I'm going to call this the Auburn effect, all right? Because Auburn, not in the Final Four, obviously, but Auburn may have directly affected the Final Four more than any other team because one extra second put on the clock, some would argue, changed the outcome of the Iron Bowl. So Alabama finds themselves on the outside looking in. But Oregon's also sitting there saying, if we hadn't scheduled Auburn to start the season, would we be in?
They've got to be kicking themselves, man. 100%. I mean, what was the benefit of doing that?
I don't know. I think you got a benefit of the doubt by like being in the conversation late in the game because you scheduled Auburn and you played them well and you only got beaten the last 30 seconds in the game by a freshman quarterback that found his groove suddenly, right? Like, I feel like there was a benefit of the doubt given, courtesy of you playing them.
I don't know, though. I'm just saying, right now, if we're looking at Oregon as a one-loss team, they don't have that Auburn loss. We take it away. They're a one-loss team. They're a Pac-12 champion. Are they going in above Oklahoma?
If Oregon... Stop making this about Auburn. Don't do it. It's not about Auburn. We know it's not about Auburn, right? Like if there was sitting there was a one-loss team with that loss against Arizona State erased. If they just don't lose to Herm Edwards, don't hit send in the Pac-12, and they've got a one-loss against a quality. I mean, listen, the committee loves this word. We all know it. Quality loss against an Auburn team that they love. They are in. So they are not being penalized for scheduling Auburn. They're being penalized
for losing a conference game.
Losing to UVA. Right. Yeah, in a sense, you know what I mean? Like, granted, that was an ACC championship game, but that's like Clemson losing to UVA or North Carolina earlier in the season. Right. They don't, Here's
what we can't do. We can't conveniently forget losses. Like, with the Wisconsin argument yesterday, had they won, everybody was like, well, Wisconsin they lost to Ohio State early. They also lost to Illinois. Auburn did lose week 1 in August, mind you. Excuse me, Oregon lost week 1 in August to Auburn. But they also lost to Arizona State.
And we know early losses, and this is, I think,
so forgivable.
They're much more forgivable, especially against a good team like that early in the season. But we know you're not the team you're going to be. You just talked about November football. No one's the final version of themselves in September.
But let's not bury our head in the sand to at least the narrative that Alabama's out there scheduling against like music conservatories in the middle of November, right? Like there is this. They
got a lot of Juilliard.
There's at least the narrative that like here you got Oregon saying, hey, we're going to start the year against Auburn. We're going to show them something. And then you got teams in the SEC that frankly just aren't doing that. And so it feels, if you're a Pac-12 fan, you feel like maybe you got kicked to the no-no place.
This might not be the year to make that argument about the SEC, considering we're lauding LSU, saying they might not even be the true best team if Clemson's that way. But look at the juggernaut schedule. Look at what Auburn went through this year to lose the games they did. Georgia, who I saw in the AP poll, we don't have the rest of the CFP rankings, but in the AP poll, Georgia dropped all the way down to 5. That's how much people respect their body of work and all that. And Florida, by the way, has just been chilling inside the top 10.
We forgot about Florida, so we were having a whole discussion earlier about bowls, and we're like, oh wait. Florida's
sitting right there.
Here's the thing everybody has to realize. I looked at this last week, and I'll ask you all the same question. When you look at the number 4 team in the nation to the number 16 team in the nation. Number 16 last week was like Notre Dame and everybody in between there. Penn State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Florida, Auburn. I think it's a toss-up who would win on any given day. So that's why, to Golic's first point at the top of the show, you got to go to something. To the Venn diagram thing, you have to go to most deserving. Because realistically, is OU really better than a Michigan? I think on any given
Unequivocally,
day.
yeah, no, you can't say that. You can't argue that in whatever sense, because we've seen faults in each and every one of these programs that are glaring at times, and other times, every other week, you're able to kind of set them aside and say, oh, they may have figured it out.
Agreed.
For instance, Michigan's offense, right? We felt that was a problem, but Shea Patterson found a way to figure that out as the season went along. And
From the second half of the Penn State game on,
it was that moment. It felt like they completely turned it around.
EJ, tell me I'm wrong. There are 3 playoff caliber teams in college football this year, right?
Yeah.
We got to have 4, but there's only 3. Like, this is just one of those years, right? Like, there are 3 great teams in college football, and then we just got to find somebody else.
Well, the only way it'll make sense is if either you expand the playoff or you allow some of these teams to play earlier in the season. I mean, outside of that, there's the only way that you can make an argument for a 4th team. So I'm not mad at Oklahoma getting in. I think some of the past, opportunities that they've been in championships before, Lincoln Riley's been successful. They had a great year last year. They were in it last year too. So I think that's why you get in. 'Cause when you come down to a committee, it's not like the BCS or anything. You don't have a point system anymore. So at the end of the day, these people are making their own opinion, and that's why they got in. So it's hard to get that 4th one. Yeah, it's popularity, the sexy wins.
Well, I would say people always say like the brand bias wins. I'd say it's just us being humans. Like again, the reason if you were to just take Clemson within the body this year, you'd see them wax a bunch of bad teams, and you would trust the parts. But it's all of us knowing and saying, all right, Justin Ross and T. Higgins and Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne all put it on Alabama and everyone they faced in the playoffs last year. So we say all those same parts did that stuff to the teams that we knew we were good. And so we give them the benefit of the doubt that we wouldn't be able to do in a vacuum. But we're not robots or computers. We're people who remember those games. So it's just trust, I think, as much as anything. We trust the teams that are in it.
As you are speaking so eloquently, I'm just looking at the playback of you and I.
Oh, yeah.
The antlers is Santa Claus.
I want it noted for people, by the way, that dogs and cats are represented on here because I think all of our furry friends deserve love. So.
I mean, it's just, I'm imagining one guy in the committee coming in with this and then just hammering down. It's like, no, I'm telling you.
See Rob Mullins up there on the screen next to Herbie, like, well, as I flex my antlers. Remind everybody that strength of resume is actually the most important.
It's Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. Christine, how's the reaction so far?
Well, I wanted to ask you guys a question. You're having a conversation about the top 3 being top 3, number 4 being iffy. If not Oklahoma, which team would go into the number 4 spot if resume did not matter?
That's a heck of a question.
Yeah, like, who is the actual 4th best team in the country?
Like you said earlier, though, it's a toss-up. Because, I mean, you take Oklahoma and you put them up against a Michigan or you put them up against another team that might be in the top 10.
With Oregon,
Penn
fresh
State.
off that Pac-12.
Who knows who
like
wins?
that.
At the end of the day, it's who's going to play best on that Saturday. So you really don't know. That's why I say you go Oklahoma because they've been there before.
So then my conclusion, because I've had this internal debate before, is this. Now I go to who has the most potential.
Right.
Meaning who has the most collective talented players, which you have to roll back to Alabama, assuming a healthy quarterback or assuming a Mac Jones that's developed over time. Because you can't deny Ruggs, Judy. Talk to me.
Now, if Tua doesn't get hurt, does that change the equation for Alabama then?
Absolutely, because Mac Jones threw 2 pick sixes in the Iron Bowl, and like we're having a completely different discussion, right? Like that's 14 points off of the board that we're not even concerned with because Mac Jones had to step in for Tua.
I mean, if Tua's still healthy, Alabama's in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, it feels like it.
Assuming they win the Iron Bowl.
All Alabama had to do was win the Iron Bowl, and they still would have found a way.
With or without Tua?
Yeah. Think about this.
I think that's the Keon Martin effect, man.
I think the way that they won, because again, it's an Auburn defense. And forget about Bo Nix in the offense. We trust that defense.
Yes.
And they it wasn't because Alabama didn't score enough points in that game. So you can say, all right, Mac Jones can be part of an offense that puts up points on a good defense, but Tua would have made that a lot easier.
But here's what we know, that Utah lost, so that opened it up. Then Baylor, Oklahoma, nobody dominated. And the world still is not convinced Baylor's any good. So now everybody's the narrative is Oklahoma barely beat a team on their third string quarterback.
And that's such a smart point in the sense that because we frequently get asked who's the 4th best team. I would ask what team stepped up and took reins and said we are the 4th best team because we didn't see it across the board. Like Utah had that opportunity, to your point, didn't do it. Oklahoma Baylor
Stumbled into
And
it.
even if we want to kind of knock Oklahoma for that, I think, fellas, y'all all know in playing this game, it's how hard it is to beat a same team twice in one season. Knowing that they've scouted the exact same tape in the exact same year.
Look at it like this. Look no further than Wisconsin, Ohio State.
Right.
Ohio State crushed
Yeah.
Wisconsin. I mean, I think 38-7, bloodbath. Ohio State finds themselves trailing 21-7 and a half. It's near impossible, whether college or the NFL, unless you have elite dominance, to beat a team twice. Oklahoma had to come back from 28 points the first time, and it took them to overtime the second time. So they, to your point and to a point, Oklahoma did do what was built in intrinsically harder to do.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely.
Well, and that's.
Whoa!
There's a
Okay,
bell.
now.
That means, do we have a surprise coming out in the Cheez-It surprise box? Only on Rankings Reaction can we have a Cheez-It surprise coming in.
Actually, it's the transfer portal, Jason. It's the of college football that we decided we'd bring somebody into the transfer portal to help us sort out some naughty or nice teams in college football.
Talking about.
Okay. Santa's here! Santa Claus! And he's very good. Whoa! Santa! Oh, wow!
Continue to cheer for Santa.
Hey,
Belt to Santa, too.
that's more spirit Santa right there.
Santa's been working out.
Come on!
Look like you look in shape, Santa.
No more. Know what I'm talking about?
Man, Santa.
Is Santa slim fit?
Yeah,
Santa has a few observations.
Oh, boy.
Mrs. Claus has been working out Santa a lot, so I'm a little thinner these days.
Also, somehow winged after walking over to the couch, though.
You know what I'm talking about.
Whoa! Kids watch this show, Santa.
A couple of things here. Santa, in his day, played a little D-line, so I'm not really sure why there's a friggin' quarterback in there. All right? I don't think that at all.
Oh, I gotta be here, Santa.
Not one bit.
Good,
So,
man.
listen, there's a lump of coal in here for you. But if I throw it at you, I'm sure I'll get a flag. Wow, wait a minute, Mr. Rudolph.
You
You know what? The one thing I'll say is Santa's helpers in here look really good. Like they're really going to help Santa. Rudolph, you look like you ain't been in the weight room in a long time. How the heck are you pulling my sleigh?
See, that's the reason. Like, remember, I wasn't really part of the sleigh crew. I was a last-second add-on. They're like, oh man, got nowhere else to go.
Let me just tell you.
We're bringing a kid with the red nose.
You're a first-second drop-off now. And Cheez-Its are my favorite snack, but it leaves the orange dust on the fingers. Then, you know, Mrs. Claus knows what I've been doing. You know what I'm talking about?
We'll leave you some Cheez-Its.
I appreciate that very
Santa
much.
Claus. So, Santa Claus, yes. Relax.
Get comfortable, Santa.
Thank you.
This is really a key moment. Although I'm a little bummed I don't get to sit in his lap.
Word? Word?
That's for you.
Santa's giving out presents.
Oh man.
EJ's not getting a present.
Santa, while you're handing out presents,
Yeah.
what do you think of the top four, Santa?
Well, here's what I thought of the top four. Now, Santa's very, very busy, you know, preparing for Christmas, so I didn't have a lot of time to really delve into this. But I'm going to say LSU by 14 over Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
And also, I'm calling Clemson for a single-digit win over Ohio State. Yeah, single. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. I do. I think Santa called this a while ago on a couple of shows you may have heard of. That LSU would jump.
Santa and Wingo, 6 to 10 a.m.
That LSU would jump back to number one after they beat Georgia, especially how bad they beat them. And Ohio State would go to 2. Clemson would stay at 3. And then they made it very easy for Oklahoma to be number 4 with the loss by Utah, and certainly with Alabama being out of there as well. I have a question for all you analysts and so-called experts.
Quote, unquote.
I haven't heard this one asked yet. Of the 4 teams remaining, we would do this in the NFL a lot when we got to the playoffs. Rank the quarterbacks by trust. Rank the quarterbacks.
I'll let the non-QBs go first, and I'll come back.
Yeah. And you're not allowed. That's the only question you're allowed to answer while Santa's here.
I mean, looking at this list right now, I think Joe Burrow would be number 1 on the list as far as trust.
Yep.
I think number 2 would probably be Trevor Lawrence.
That's what I was thinking.
And then number 3 at this point, Is it so? It's just on the quarterback and not the
Trust
weapon.
of the quarterback. Yeah. Would you like Santa to finish his list?
You know what? I'll go Justin Fields at 3.
Really?
And I'll go Jalen Hurts at 4.
Off with his head.
Okay. Santa would flip them. Santa would go Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Hurts, and
Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields.
Which is odd because Fields has thrown all of one interception.
Right. For me, Santa, if I may call
you
Santa.
may. I like this side of the
For me, I'm actually going, if it's exclusively an incubated quarterback, I'm going Joe Burrow. Then I'm going Jalen Hurts.
That's what
by
I was thinking.
trust.
I'm right there with
Then
you.
I'm going Jalen Hurts. Then I'm going Trevor Lawrence. Then I'm going with Justin Fields.
Okay.
I'm putting Lawrence third because Lawrence, if it's just quarterback, it's different to me. Lawrence, with his receivers, he throws that thing up, and T. Higgins and Justin Ross's catch radius is stupid. But Jalen Hurts, even to EJ's point earlier, when the ball hits the ground, when it's a bad snap, he puts the thing behind his back and is still calm and composed. By trust, I want a guy who, yes, Lawrence has been there before, but who's also been there before several times.
That's a wonderful breakdown. I just don't know what incubated means, but
That's a big word.
My only thing with Jalen Hurts is he's been there before and was so good in that spot that they put a freshman in the second half to win them the national championship ring that he's got.
But he also was put in the second half of an SEC championship and then followed it up with
no
a
doubt.
Championship right now, though. So at the end of the day, I would say Trevor Lawrence.
Now, when has Trevor Lawrence had a bad game in a game?
you're saying
this year?
Trevor
I would say
number
Trevor
one?
Lawrence at 1.
Never lost.
We're talking trust in a championship opportunity. I feel like this guy plays way better. That's
what he does.
When he has to play way better, and that's what he does.
You've never seen Joe Burrow.
Smells like ACC over there, doesn't it?
ESPN's patented ACC bias.
Trying to get some viewers on that.
ACC net. Check it out.
Then what's the rest?
Well, I would just say you go with this guy first, then Joe Burrow, and you just look at his body of work this season. I mean, he's probably the most refined out of the 4. Like, again, that's probably because he's older. He's been, battle tested a little more. And then I would say Jalen Hurts next because, again, experience always helps as a quarterback. You don't go into the moment wondering what's going to happen. You know how to prepare too. That's another thing. When you have 3 weeks, a lot of times you get idle time. You're kind of bored. You watch film 5-4 times, so you're like, all right, well, what else do I need to look at that I haven't seen? And then you go Fields at Ohio State.
Does it matter to anybody that we haven't seen Joe Burrow in this situation before?
To me, it doesn't because, again, and I'm not an SEC guy. There's no SEC bias in my blood. But what we have seen is I saw Joe Burrow march into Austin week 2, back when everybody thought Texas was an amazing program. And that was a huge game poised. I think he threw for over 400 yards. What we have seen is Joe Burrow against Alabama. When Alabama hasn't lost at home in 30-plus ball games, he said it ain't no thing to me. What we have seen is Joe Burrow dominate time and time again in huge games. Not a national championship game, I get it, I know, but huge games nonetheless.
And he instills a lot of confidence. Every time we talk to Marcus Spears of the world, the Ryan Clarks, guys that are LSU grads who are still very tied into that program, they said everybody else says, oh no, we got a shot because we got 9.
Yes.
It's like we're rolling into there and we know we've got 9, and so everyone else's job becomes easier.
So, first, is it difficult to look at Santa and have a serious conversation?
No. It's actually much easier.
So how much comes into play the fact of all the time off now? You got to believe if you've been through this, like Clemson. I remember ho, and sad, the 44 days when Notre Dame was at number 1 trying to prepare for that game against Alabama, a team who had been used to that. And Santa had to sit through that entire game because he was contractually obligated because he had kids on the field for that. Was that too harsh? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So how much of an advantage is that for Clemson? I mean, knowing exactly how to kind of spend these days.
I think they have their method. They have their madness that has worked and has been very efficient. So I think when you talk about expertise and how much of an advantage that gives you, Dabo Swinney knows what week 1 looks like, what week 2 looks like, what game week looks like, and it's not a guessing game. He has a formula that has produced 2 championships in the past 3 seasons. So I think when you're looking at LSU, oh man, how do we do? We have this game and then, maybe another one. So you're looking at how much physicality, how much do we have to go? At the end of the day, great coaching, and they've been on staffs that have been in championships, but I think that does have to play a part.
Here's where now we have to look at the bigger picture to me, which is the scheduling of it all. Early on in the season, and EJ will testify to it, don't lie on camera now.
It's all good.
We know Trevor Lawrence, he took some weeks off. You could say he had a 2-interception game early on in the season, forcing the ball into double coverage. That's simply because, probably a lack of preparation. Joe Burrow and LSU, they didn't have the luxury to not prepare for games, specifically when they had big games every 2 or 3 weeks. Meaning, how is their mental fortitude going to be? I just don't know if the LSU players are kind of exhausted. At the end of the day, we said it earlier, we're not robots. We're human. Yeah. Are they tired of watching film endlessly?
And Ohio State has the emotional drain of the last 3 weeks of their season being the most up-tempo from an emotional standpoint, from Penn State into Michigan, into this Big Ten championship. Ryan Day talked about it. We had the most emotionally taxing back end of a season that anybody has had out of anybody remaining in this playoff selection. So at this point, that's the other part that you have to take account into when it comes to being drained.
Ryan Day, worth noting the interesting one, because he was not with Ohio State when they were in the college football playoff the last time around, joined the staff as the OC in 2017. I'm sure he's got Urban's number and can lean on that and is going to be able to take some things from here and there. But as far as dealing with that, because when we went up against Bama, that was the one thing we said is Nick Saban, much like Dabo, has the formula for that time, uses it as well as anybody to make sure that all those guys that he grinds into dust during the regular season have time to get healthy, recover, and be back on the field, so that these teams that have uncommon depth from all this great recruiting, the way all these schools do, can go out there and really shine.
Also, I know that Ed O doesn't have any national championship resume experience, but let's also acknowledge his success against top 10 teams in general. I realize that's not to this schedule, but he's done a great job against top 10 teams. Christine, what is the, speaking of great job, Santa crushing it here, what's the social media reaction?
Thank you, Rudy.
Well, I was going to ask a question because Oklahoma is the only other team in the last, 2, 3 playoffs that has actually been there out of the top 4 this year. So does Oklahoma also have an advantage as like Clemson does going into the college football playoff?
As far as preparation, yes. I think you have an advantage over as far as getting ready for it. Once the ball's kicked, and now we're supposed to be talking about the 4 best teams. But I do think LSU is going to take care of business pretty good on Oklahoma.
So Homer614 has a question. Will the break between games help one of the 4 teams better than the others?
Who's injured?
Exactly. Oklahoma. Oklahoma probably has the most key injuries. When you talk about Kenneth Murray and Kennedy Brooks, both guys that were down on the mat.
That MCL thing is something.
And another thing that's kind of a luxury for Clemson. Honestly, these guys haven't played a 4-quarter football game probably all season.
That's real, though.
The Carolina game. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, we talk about this is a brand new season. You got 2 more games to win the actual championship. So that helps out Clemson.
Santa has another question. I'm sorry if I'm asking a question you should. I would like you to go work out right now.
I would do push-ups, but I get very winded very quickly.
You leading the sleigh, say Christmas is going to be a week.
No. Okay? Like I sit on Mike's back. He does the sleigh lady. I'm just the bright red nose. Like,
Christmas night turned into Christmas weekend with you. I mean,
it's like going into a bar, Santa. Like I'm not the one that does the heavy lifting.
Santa's been in a bar. Oh, I'm kidding, kids. All right, my question is the one thing we know about the committee for certain is no 2-loss teams are getting in. Because what if Wisconsin won? What if Wisconsin won that game? The loss to Illinois was horrific. I get it. And they got destroyed by Ohio State. But what if they won that game? Will we ever see a 2-loss team in the Final Four?
Ohio State would have been 4th. That's what would have happened.
I think I agree.
And
That's what I mean.
The playoff the next
is
year,
this the one of all the inconsistent years of the committee? Is that the one consistent thing we've seen so far? Even though there could be 2-loss teams out there that we think are better than Oklahoma, they won't get in.
Rather than use the term inconsistent, I usually just go more to subjective because it is more of just the human nature that Mike spoke to earlier, right? Like it's just human nature to understand teams may have lost early in the season, and you can rationalize certain losses and you can't rationalize other ones. Losing to Champaign Santa, no relation, I assume, there's just not something you can rationalize that even for Wisconsin, but for I was about to do that. Why would you let that joke sit? But you gotta draw attention to it.
You don't let that sit. You stop the show. You let everybody go.
I'm confused about why you don't think they're related. What did I miss?
But again, it's just subjective. I wouldn't call it inconsistent when it comes to the committee. They're just allowing human nature to infiltrate their assessment of teams.
Well, I think, Santa, you look at... I'm trying to get us back on track here.
Doing it by saying, well, I think, Santa.
Santa likes you people.
I got something for the Easter Bunny next year. Come get this.
Oh, my God.
I think if you look at it 2 ways, if you look at it purely off of who is the best team, I think a 2-loss team can get in and probably will get in sometime in the future, because if Wisconsin would have beat Ohio State, there's no way that you could have said Wisconsin is not one of the 4 best teams. They lost to Illinois, but that was, what, a month and a half ago? I don't care who the best team was in October.
Right.
Who was the best team yesterday? Who were the top 4 best yesterday?
Well, top 4 best yesterday? This weekend it also gets a very interesting flavor because you can throw Oregon into that conversation from Friday night. And it's also, to your point about we'll get there eventually with a 2-loss team, it is worth noting that this has been a weird luxury the last couple of seasons because until last year we hadn't had 3 undefeateds make the playoff, and now we've done it 2 years in a row. Before that, there had been 1-loss teams involved. Hell, Alabama lost the last week of the season and didn't go to their conference championship and still made it. Yeah. So we'll see a 2-team. I think we'll see a team with 2 losses in there, 2 close losses, before we ever see a team get their doors blown off. The way Ohio State did against Purdue, the way way that Wisconsin did against Ohio State early in the season without avenging that loss. So I think that would happen first.
So you're watching Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. There's a whole bunch of us, most notably Santa Claus on the couch. Since we have Santa on the couch, we should take a look at some naughty and nice teams. I figure that makes sense, right? The naughty list.
Oh, I know the naughty ones.
Oh, wow.
The pause.
Yeah, just keep going. Just let it go.
Make it worse drawing attention to it.
Okay, so I'll put on my naughty list. I'll put Auburn on my naughty list because they tried to mess everything up for everybody. I'm going to come back to Auburn, affected this playoff more than anybody. So I'll put Auburn on my naughty list, and I will on my nice list. I want to give a little love quickly. Memphis. Memphis football almost gone a decade ago. Come on, they turned it around. Mike Norvell obviously headed to Florida State, but now they've managed to have this level of resurgence with 2 different coaches at this point.
Bring them on, baby.
Always amazing. Things look so good for a team, and then you got to start over with a new coach because he gets taken.
But still, Memphis. When Fuentes left, they thought it was done, and then Norvell comes in, and so a little of the nice list for Memphis as they win the AAC, and they are likely, we don't know yet, but I would presume that they'll be the highest ranked of the group of 5, and they'll get to go to a New Year's Six Bowl, which is pretty spectacular for a program that was almost gone.
EJ, very excited over
I'm surprised y'all didn't ask me that question already. I know this is like a question or a show about the CFP, but I'm super excited to have him. So I saw him speak when they did College Game Day at Memphis. I didn't know that he would end up being the FSU coach, but I liked his zeal, I liked his energy. He seemed very confident, and to be honest, that's what I wasn't getting from Coach Taggart. That's what was bothering me. Even if you win, you lose a game, there's a certain way that you win and there's a certain way that you lose. And I think it's a certain way that you address the media, and I wasn't seeing that from him. So I'm excited to have Coach Norvell at Florida State.
I've actually watched a lot of Memphis football over the last couple of years, and I think what's really surprising and what's the tip of the hat to Norvell is that 2 years ago he had a running offense that was based on 2 guys that are now in the NFL. And then he came in this year and he ripped that entire thing apart and he did it different. And when you talk to him, we were at game day, and when I talked to him about why, his thing was sometimes you got to look at your roster and figure out who you have, and you make that roster as good as they can be. And that's such a basic principle I want every coach to do. So I think Mike Norvell will be successful wherever he goes because of it. So
he's got plenty of that in his bag. He was the passing game coordinator for a Tulsa team that marched into South Bend and beat our tails that year. Behind making the best out of
another sad day for Santa.
Wasn't a great time. We already got to my naughty list item here of Oregon, for losing to Arizona State and not to Auburn, because we're not bringing that up anymore. So I just wanted to again highlight that point, that it was the Arizona State loss and not the Auburn loss for Oregon on that one. So we're going to stop going down. They weren't penalized for scheduling Auburn. That was a net positive for them to have this, especially for the Pac-12. By the way, going forward, marquee games like that are going to be the difference for the Pac-12. The conference censor swims based off how that perception was going to be drawn very early in this process. We know that's the difficulty for Larry Scott and company as they start to think about scheduling games at different times, all that stuff. Games like that matter in the Pac-12 going forward. My nice list, I'm going to go Appalachian State. They've been an FBS program for like 5 years now. They got their highest ever ranking in the AP poll earlier this season after decimating the Carolinas, taking down North and South Carolina. As I think I saw our friends at Banner Society say, it is no longer the Carolinas, it is strictly Appalachia. So Coach Drinkwitz and the job that he's done there has been, it's been a steady climb for this team since the days of them being one of the most famous college football upsets of all time. They are building a consistent winner there in the last few years, especially now as a full-fledged FBS program.
Now, despite my outfit, my antlers, and the the group of people that we have. We're going to be professional for a moment, gentlemen. Ready? Now it's time to review the weekend of college football. These are your crunch time moments presented by Cheez-It.
You're doing it with your mouth full. It's not
I know. Right. We're still semi-professional. We'll start with Memphis. I was just talking about them. First up, Cincinnati, Memphis. Over a little over 1 minute left in the fourth. I'm falling apart here.
Thought you were being
Brady
professional.
White finds Antonio Gibson, 6-yard touchdown. Gives the Tigers a late lead. Well-designed play. Memphis wins the AAC championship. Again, Mike Norvell gets that championship win for that program. And we'll see what it means for them moving forward. That's one of the plays. The next play on the list, let's go to Baylor. They had to go to their third-string quarterback in the Big 12 championship. Jacob Zeno passes it to Treston Ebner, leaps up to snag a catch, takes off for an 81-yard touchdown that cut into Oklahoma's lead. That's a spectacular moment for a third-string quarterback. I'm just saying, Baylor had everything against them, so kudos to their ability to keep that game tight, even when they had to go to the third string. But we have one more play that we have to take a look at, of course, and we're going to stay in the same game after we get done watching that review. And that play goes to Oklahoma, stopping Baylor on the final drive with a sack. Oh, brutal. Absolutely great. Get the stop on the fourth down. That is the game over. So absolutely spectacular work by Oklahoma, getting the work, getting the stop. And again, this game did end up going to overtime, so it took everything that they could have, everything they could muster. I want to give Baylor love. Third-string quarterback going into that Big 12 championship. I can't stress it enough. Oklahoma gets a win. Oklahoma now finds themselves in a playoff. Those were your crunch time plays. But I do still have to say, guys, like at the end of the day, everything went wrong for Baylor, and they found themselves in overtime in this game.
That you can't state that enough, and not just looking at this year. But remember what happened 2 years ago. Matt Rule leaves Temple, goes to Baylor, all their sanctions. I mean, we don't have enough time in the show to talk about all the penalties, all the sanctions, and just the bad reputation of that program, the infamy of Baylor football. Matt Rule shows up, 1-11, then 7-6, and then 11-1. Takes OU into overtime in a Big 12 championship game on his third-string quarterback and still nearly wins. If there's a nice list, Baylor is above everybody else, and Matt Rule's right there with him.
Yeah, unfortunately, how soon is he gone? You know,
Yeah,
that's a trouble. And I also love, and I'm glad you showed that about the kid Zeno, Jacob Zeno, I believe it. I mean, played in one game before that. We all know as former ball players.
Santa, you played golf.
As I said, I was a D lineman earlier. That's why I don't like the quarterback.
I played a lot of Maddens. Yeah. Don't slide on it. I mean, a lot of Maddens. Mike Thomas.
Here's a kid that all of a sudden, through circumstances, got an opportunity. And that's all you look for as a player is you look for an opportunity. And, man, he went out there and he was slinging it. That was really impressive.
Matt made that decision, too, based off of his second-string quarterback just not getting it done. So, like, the gall that he has to have in a Big 12 conference championship game where you know he has to have it in order to even get in the conversation of a college football playoff, to just say, you know what, we're just going to go to this third guy because I know he has something.
That's what makes great coaches great. Like, people are like, oh, what makes Matt Rule so good? A stubborn coach would have just stuck to your second stringer and been like, man, my third stringer hasn't taken any reps. Zeno's touchdown pass, I believe, was his fourth pass attempt of the season. His fourth pass attempt. And then also, what was Matt Rule telling him? Like, hey, don't even worry about it. You got it. Like, it's just go ball. That's the stuff that makes great coaches great.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see what Matt Rule's future is, because one thing we did learn at game day this year, and I frankly, I didn't know, he took that job because he felt like that's where God was calling him to be, and he feels like he's being called to rebuild a program. So that's such an interesting variable when you look at what he's created and what motivates him. He was very transparent, and his family's very transparent, that they never take a job for any reason other than where they feel they've been called to. So for whatever has happened, and obviously we could spend hours talking about what's happened in the past in Baylor, and Matt Rule has never run from that, but he's also not running from the fact that as a faith-based person, he believes that he's pushing that program forward. So kudos to Baylor for everything that they accomplished this year. Now, you guys that are new to the show aren't aware that it gets very contentious at the end every week, because somebody, and I still do not know who, genuinely, decides that they're going to rank things at the end. Every week we get a way more important ranking. And last week it was a savage and disgusting ranking of Christmas movies. Now apparently someone has decided our way more important top
holiday
6 holiday songs.
Whoa!
At number 6, 12 Days of Christmas. This list is already trashed. At number 5, Rudolph.
Should they be
Rudolph at 5. Number 4, Last Christmas.
Last Christmas?
Number 3, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. That's good. Number 2 is Jingle Bell Rock. I swear to God, if Oh Holy Night isn't number 1 on this list. All I Want for Christmas is You.
Yeah,
All I Want for Christmas is You, the best Christmas song of all time.
That's number 1?
Yeah.
Where's Donnie Hathaway?
Nah, they played that at a bar the other night. And everybody was crazy when that came
That's what I
out. So I'm
mean,
gonna be
like-
honest, like,
No, it's a great song.
It's a great
Gets the
song.
people going.
yeah.
I'm just saying, if we're talking holiday songs, how is Oh Holy Night not on your list? I'm just
I'm
saying.
with
That's
you.
true. That's true.
Here's my thing. I would put Jingle Bell Rock #1. It had a couple early losses.
Okay.
But I would a couple early losses. But I would put them at #1 because it always jams. You could be in a bad mood and that jingle bell jingle, and then your shoulders just gonna start to do something. And for me, it's the top two.
Hacho, we know my shoulders ain't doing any of that. Like, there's no reason it should ever happen. All right, but here's my thing. When we're talking best song, it doesn't matter who sings it. It's still a great song, right? Like,
Yeah. Right.
that's part
Yeah,
of this that comes in. Like, Last Christmas? Yeah, I mean, the original version of Last Christmas.
Santa's
is
not
good.
allowed to show favorites to Christmas songs.
Oh,
I was gonna say Santa's got to
Wait,
leave the community.
I am Mr. Mullins. I am walking out right now. I have to recuse myself.
I mean,
No, I disagree with #1.
I mean, All I Want
It's
for
wrong.
Christmas Is
It's
You,
wrong.
or All I Want for Christmas is great, but
It's
All
like
I
number
Want for
6.
Christmas Is You, to me, is like the Clemson of this group right now. You can say it hasn't been battle tested for, it hasn't been a dynasty as long as Alabama. It doesn't maybe have some of the deep roots, but as of late, if you need someone to plug and play in the biggest situation of your holiday,
He's not
you
wrong.
throw that one at everyone in the
everybody
team.
y'all-
that is true.
have you
That's
never
great-
been
that's
to a
a great
candlelight
metaphor.
church service?
That's
I
true.
mean, Silent Night with the little candles going,
Right.
everybody, like, that's emotion, that's the Christmas spirit.
You gotta go, but you gotta go with Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5. I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus.
That's a solid one. That's a solid one.
That's gotta be
Yeah.
something
That's a
good.
good
I would
one.
say
That's a
to
Been
anybody.
down that road, know what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
I ain't thinking of Michael Jackson.
There's something as simple as the Christmas song,
I was gonna say,
Like
what
the
is the Christmas song?
right? Like the Christmas song itself. Like that is, it embodies everything that is Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost
Jack
nipping
Frost
at your
nipping at
nose.
your
The lyrics
nose.
itself
Yes,
paint a
sir.
picture that is unparalleled by any of these Christmas songs that
Painting a
are
picture.
on this
Rudolph
podcast.
used to be my favorite song until
Wow. Hey, Emac, you got to take on a favorite.
Rudolph was the red-nosed reindeer was mine, and I'm not to call out the host, but that I would love to hear you sing it right now.
Yes.
Reindeer had a very shiny nose.
Oh,
And if he ever saw
Okay, okay.
you, you would even days glow.
like what?
All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names.
Hey!
They know I'm doing
I knew.
joining any reindeer gang.
And that's how it goes to #1.
I was just told that Caroline has been making these lists every single week. Whoa! I've been told
Do
it.
not do that to me.
she's
I
mad.
mean, that's just what I was told. I got
absolutely not.
I got a little
so.
elf in my ear, and the little elf in my ear definitely said Caroline's been making the list.
I don't believe that. I don't believe it.
Somebody's getting knocked
My
out at the end
music
of the
taste
show,
is
and it
way
ain't me.
more fire than that, and you know that.
Well, wait, what's your number 1 then?
Don't you dare.
What's your number 1?
Ave Maria.
That's a good song.
That's battle tested right there.
Yeah,
That has a
anything
hard
Michael
straight
Bublé
That's
can
true.
do. Yeah,
battle tested.
yeah.
It's okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
Santa with the gift.
Santa came in hot. I like
Santa
it.
to the rescue, man.
That's how you know Santa's been married a long time. It's like, she's mad. Let's get her started. That's how you know.
Way to step in and save the day, Santa.
So
That's what we call averting a horrible situation right there.
So let's have a sincere moment. Rankings reaction, Cheez-It. Obviously, Cheez-It made this happen this year, but also everybody on this couch. There are a million people on this crew that make this show happen every single week. There have been people behind the scenes you don't get to see on the couch. That's what has made this show great every single week. Mike and I have just shown up like a couple of idiots. We've been really thankful to have a lot of smart people join us every week, but also all of the people behind the scenes that make this show happen every single week is the real energy behind it. So what makes this show magical is everybody you don't see every single week. We can't say enough thanks on behalf of all of us here. This has been an incredible season. Throughout whatever the playoff committee has given us, it's been fun to react to all of it. We look forward to doing it again. This is our 3rd straight season we've done it. We look forward to doing it again. Thank you so much for joining us as always. Thanks to everybody that's here with us today right now. It's been a hell of a season, and it wouldn't be anything without all of you. Thank you very much. Have a great holiday.
Merry Christmas.
Oh.